The next time you're grocery shopping, take a second to look at the nutrition labels. You may not be surprised to see natural flavor listed as an ingredient on all the different products, from spices and herbs to meat and dairy. It's something many of us see all the time. In fact, the Environmental Working Group lists it as one of the most common ingredients found in packaged food.
And what natural flavors are, or what that indicates, is often a mixture of components that are added to the product to give it a specific taste or smell. And the word natural is an FDA regulated term indicating the source of those chemicals that are added to the food. And for natural flavors, the source has to be naturally derived, be it extracted from plants or specific flowers.
Which is then mixed with up to 100 different chemicals that get added to our food, giving it a consistent taste and smell. Dr. David Andrews is a senior scientist at the Environmental Working Group. It's a nonprofit focused on research and advocacy for agriculture, toxic chemicals, and drinking water pollutants. Andrews says that the only chemicals required to be naturally derived from plants or animals are the ones providing a taste and smell. All of the others, like solvents and preservatives, don't have the same standard. So, how do scientists create these flavors?
So it's a natural origin. And so you can take, let's say, an orange or a strawberry and then purify it, extract a specific chemical from that. And you're trying to purify down to a single chemical. And then that single chemical can be added into a natural flavor. So that the original source of that chemical had to be natural. It couldn't be produced in a lab.
Even though Andrews says the end product is often extremely similar to artificial flavors. But why does our food need flavor added? It's due to the processing many products undergo.
And it's not to say that that's always necessarily bad. In some cases, the processing that happens is done so that a product doesn't spoil, make sure it eliminates bacterial or other types of contamination. So where products are heated or pasteurized to a high temperature, you may lose some of the volatile chemicals that actually provide the taste sensation. So some of that is for health safety reasons, and the flavors are being added back in.
But it doesn't mean all natural flavors are good for us. One of Andrew's main concerns with the ingredient is the potential for it to be engineered to make us crave unhealthy food.
If these flavors are being added in such a way that they are changing our desires for foods that are less healthy, because it can definitely play into that's the ultimate goal for many of these food companies, is to sell them more product, right? And one way to make your product more appealing is make sure it's consistent, but also to try to really optimize or manipulate, depending on how you want to look at it, our taste buds and our sense of taste in terms of what we find desirable. So the ultimate goal is to make a consistent product, but it has that potential downside of driving us to desire foods that may not be as healthy.
Yes, flavor chemists control how certain foods taste and smell, but they can also alter other components, like how long the taste lingers on your tongue. Two scientists from one of the flavor and fragrance industry leaders were interviewed in 2011 to discuss these extra manipulations.
The question that got asked of one of the flavor chemists was, is addiction your ultimate goal? And didn't want to repeat the word, but indicated that is in some ways what we're going towards, is trying to provide a flavor and an experience that may be short lasting, but may also drive you to go back to that product to eat more now, or to go back and purchase more of the product on an ongoing basis. So the ultimate goal is to create a greater desire for that food-based product. And as I said, the concern comes in, especially if that's driving us to eat products that may not be as healthy and may not have the same nutritional value.
Natural flavors aren't the only added chemicals we often see on the ingredient list. In fact, artificial flavors may be more common because they're cheaper to make. Otherwise, Andrews says there's not much of a difference between the two.
Flavor companies, or companies that provide these products to food manufacturers, they will make a natural and an artificial flavor that is very similar. And it's just differences in where the primary ingredients are sourced. So the artificial flavors are ones that can be produced in a laboratory space and they're added to food, but they will often be primarily the same chemicals that are used in a natural flavor, whereas the natural flavor, those chemicals that are providing the taste sensation or the smell will be derived from another food-based product or a plant-based product typically. But the end result may actually be very similar to an artificial flavor, where you're actually adding the exact same chemical composition to the products.
When the Environmental Working Group was deciding where to put the two in their food database, there wasn't enough difference from a health perspective to categorize them separately.
One place we did make a distinction was organic natural flavors because of requirements on some of the other ingredients in the flavor in terms of some of the preservatives that can be used and some of the solvents. The organic specification eliminated some of the ones we had concerns about. But overall, there's not, and part of this is because of a lack of disclosure, lack of knowing what's in there, but oftentimes there may not be that much of a difference between the artificial and the natural flavor in terms of the chemical composition of what's being added to the product.
And though it can be difficult to avoid natural and artificial flavorings altogether, Andrews says it's good to do whenever possible. While our current knowledge of these ingredients doesn't show any great health risks, companies aren't required to fully disclose the list of chemicals in their natural and artificial flavorings to consumers. Andrews believes the public deserves more transparency into food additives as a whole.
For many chemical additives in food or ingredient additives in food, there's a process where food companies can self-assert that ingredients are safe or generally recognized as safe, which is required before an ingredient can be added to food. But they could do that in secret without even telling the Food and Drug Administration. So there's potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of food additives that haven't actually been fully reviewed by the Food and Drug Administration. And also there are common additives where concerns have come up in the past few decades, and there's no really active system to reevaluate the safety of ingredients in food.
Ingredients such as titanium dioxide, a white powder that's long been used in many popular candies and food. It provides a smooth texture and works as a white colorant. Last year, this additive was banned in the European Union based on an assessment by the European Food Safety Authority. However, other agencies, including the FDA, don't believe there's any safety concerns when the ingredient is used in the proper quantity. In America, the regulations specify that titanium dioxide cannot be more than 1% of the food by weight. However, Andrews thinks this situation shows the need for a review system that continually reevaluates the ingredients in our food.
The science is continually evolving. We're learning much more about how ingredients at low concentration can have an impact on our body. And so having a robust system to ensure the safety of not just flavors and the ingredients in flavors, but actually all food additives and all food ingredients, I think is really important.
This segment is part of our new series called Kitchen Chemistry, where we do a deep dive into common ingredients many of us eat every day. You can find more information about kitchen chemistry, Dr. David Andrews, and all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson. This segment is brought to you by Capital One. With one of the best savings rates in America, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A., member FDIC. Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
It appears somewhat more likely than the general population, but it's not the majority of causes. And if we just look for mental illness, we'll miss the majority of mass violence.
Is mental illness a scapegoat for mass violence?
Then why one expert says sugar has much better uses than sweetening our food.
Much in the same way that I look at oil as too valuable to burn, I look at sugar as far too valuable to eat all of it.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal. I'm Elizabeth Westfield, host of Radio Health Journal. If you enjoy listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
It's really clear from long-term bird banding records that the timing of bird migration is changing. Spring migration is getting earlier and earlier over time.
The changing patterns of bird migration. Then,
I had only acted up until that point of getting my first apartment and emancipated at 14, and I didn't have a domestic skill to save my life.
We speak to the one and only Drew Barrymore. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Viewpoints on your favorite radio station, iTunes, and Stitcher.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.